Katie Morgan wiped sweat from her forehead as she worked deep in the crystal caves of New Terra. The blue crystals glowed softly around her, casting dancing shadows on the rough walls. Her father Jake worked nearby, his mining tool humming as it carefully cut through the rock. "Easy there, Katie," Jake said with a smile. "These crystals are worth more than gold. One wrong move and we lose a month's pay." Katie laughed. "I know, Dad, you've only told me 1,000 times." She loved working with her father in the mines. The crystals were beautiful, and they powered everything on their small colony world. Life was good on New Terra. Above them, the sky was turning orange with sunset. The colony's main town sat in a valley below the crystal caves. About 3,000 people called New Terra home. They had lived here peacefully for 30 years, mining the special crystals and sending them to other worlds. Katie was 16 and strong from years of mining work. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's green eyes. Most people on the colony knew her. She was always quick to help others and never complained about hard work. "Time to head home," Jake said, packing up his tools. "Your mother will have dinner ready soon." They walked toward the mine entrance together. Katie looked up at the stars beginning to show in the darkening sky. She had never been to other worlds, but she dreamed of traveling among those distant lights someday. Suddenly the ground shook. A deep rumble filled the air. Jake grabbed Katie's arm. What was that? Above them, massive dark shapes blocked out the stars. Huge alien ships hung in the sky like metal clouds. Red lights blinked along their sides. The ships were bigger than anything Katie had ever seen. "Those aren't human ships," Jake whispered. A loud voice boomed from the sky, speaking in broken human language. "People of this world, you will surrender now. Your mining rights belong to the Zephyrian Empire. You will obey or you will die." Jake pulled Katie deeper into the mine. "We need to get to the emergency shelter," he said. But before they could move, bright beams of light shot down from the ships. The beams hit the town below. Buildings exploded into flames. People screamed. Katie watched in horror as her home burned. "Mom!" she cried. Her mother, Lisa, worked in the town's medical center. "She'll be in the emergency bunker," Jake said, but his voice shook with worry. "Come on, we have to get out of here." They ran through the mine tunnels as more explosions shook the ground above. Dust and rocks fell from the ceiling. The beautiful blue crystals cracked and sparked with dangerous energy. "This way," Jake shouted, leading Katie toward a back exit. But as they rounded a corner, a massive explosion hit directly above them. The tunnel ceiling cracked like glass. Huge chunks of rock began to fall. Jake pushed Katie forward. "Run!" he yelled. Katie stumbled as sharp crystal pieces fell around her. She felt a burning pain in her back as jagged crystal shards cut deep into her spine. Her legs went numb. She fell to the ground, unable to move. "Dad!" she screamed. Jake was trapped under a pile of rocks. Blood ran down his face, but he was still trying to reach her. "Katie, listen to me," he gasped. "You have to survive. You have to find your mother. Promise me." "I promise, Dad, but you're going to be okay. Help will come." Jake smiled sadly. "I love you, Katie. Never forget that." His eyes closed and he stopped moving. Katie lay trapped under fallen rocks, her legs completely without feeling. Crystal dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe. She could hear explosions and screams from outside, but no one came to help. Hours passed in darkness and pain. When morning came, human voices finally reached her. Pete Collins, the colony's chief engineer, and 2 other survivors found her in the rubble. Pete was a thin man with gray hair who had always been kind to Katie's family. "Katie, thank God you're alive," Pete said, carefully moving rocks away from her. When they freed her, she tried to stand but couldn't feel her legs at all. "I can't move my legs," she whispered. "And my dad. He's gone." Pete's face went pale. He checked Jake's body and shook his head sadly. "I'm sorry, Katie, I'm so sorry." They carried Katie out of the ruined mine. Outside, the world had changed completely. The colony town was mostly burned and empty. Alien soldiers walked through the streets. They were tall lizard creatures with thick scales and cruel yellow eyes. The Zephyrians had taken over everything. Pete took Katie to a hidden cave in the mountains where other survivors waited. Her mother, Lisa, was there, crying with relief when she saw Katie alive. But when Lisa learned that Jake was dead and Katie couldn't walk, she cried even harder. "The crystals cut your spine," Lisa said, examining Katie's injuries. As a medical worker, she knew what the damage meant. "I don't have the equipment to fix this here." About 200 colonists had survived the attack. The rest were either dead or captured by the Zephyrians, Ben Carter, who had been in charge of the colony, was among the dead. The aliens had shot him when he refused to surrender. "What do they want from us?" Katie asked Pete. "Our crystals," Pete answered bitterly. "They're mining them 10 times faster than we ever did. They don't care if they destroy the planet doing it." From their hiding place, they could see Zephyrian ships carrying away tons of crystals every day. The aliens worked human prisoners like slaves, forcing them to mine in dangerous conditions. Many died from exhaustion or accidents. Katie sat in the cave, unable to walk, watching her world die. The crystal shards were still in her back, too dangerous to remove without proper surgery. The aliens had taken everything from her family, friends, her home, her ability to walk, and her future. But as she stared at the glowing crystal fragments embedded in her spine, something strange began to happen. The crystals pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Sometimes she thought she heard whispers in a language she didn't understand. Pete said it was just her imagination, but Katie knew something was changing inside her. The Zephyrians had won this battle, but Katie promised herself that somehow, someday they would pay for what they had done. She didn't know how a paralyzed girl could fight an alien empire, but she would find a way. The crystals in her back glowed a little brighter in the darkness of the cave. 3 months had passed since the Zephyrian attack. Katie sat in her wheelchair, looking down at the ruined colony from their mountain hiding place. Pete Collins had built the wheelchair from salvaged parts, adding small hover engines so she could move over rough ground. Life in the caves was hard. Food was running low and more colonists got sick every week. The Zephyrians didn't seem to care if the surviving humans lived or died, as long as they stayed hidden and didn't interfere with the mining operation. Katie's mother, Lisa, worked constantly, treating sick people with limited medical supplies. Pete tried to keep everyone's spirits up by fixing broken equipment and telling jokes. But Katie could see the worry in his eyes. They couldn't hide forever. "I need to go back to the mines," Katie told Pete one morning. "Absolutely not," he replied. "It's too dangerous. The Zephyrians patrol that area constantly. My father might have left tools there. We could use them." Katie had been thinking about the mines for weeks. Something kept pulling her back to that place, though she couldn't explain why. "Katie, your father's tools won't help us fight an alien army," Pete said gently. But Katie wouldn't give up. "I know those tunnels better than anyone. I can get in and out without being seen. Please, Pete, I have to do something useful. I can't just sit here waiting." After hours of arguing, Pete finally agreed to help her. They waited until nightfall, then Pete guided Katie's hover chair down the mountain paths. The Zephyrians had motion sensors around the main mine entrances, but Katie knew secret ways in through old maintenance tunnels. They reached the tunnel where Katie had been trapped. Pete wanted to go first, but Katie shook her head. "I need to do this myself," she whispered. Her hover chair moved silently through the dark passages. The crystal formations still glowed softly, but many were cracked or missing from the explosion. Katie found the spot where her father had died. Pete had removed his body months ago, but Katie still felt a deep sadness there. She was about to turn back when she noticed something strange. One of the damaged walls showed a gap behind it, leading to a passage she had never seen before. The crystals around the opening pulsed with unusual colors, not the normal blue glow. "Pete, come look at this," she called softly. Pete squeezed through the gap first, then helped guide Katie's chair through. Beyond was a tunnel that sloped downward, carved from solid rock but clearly very old. The walls were covered with symbols that didn't look human or Zephyrian. "This isn't part of our mind system," Pete whispered. "This is something else entirely." They followed the tunnel for several minutes until it opened into a huge underground chamber. Katie gasped. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above them. But what took her breath away was the structure in the center. It looked like a giant crystal tree, reaching up toward the cavern roof. But unlike the simple mining crystals, this one pulsed with rainbow colors that shifted and flowed like liquid light. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing and fading in complex patterns. "What is this thing?" Pete asked, his voice full of wonder. Katie felt drawn to the crystal structure. Her chair moved forward almost by itself. As she got closer, the whispers she had been hearing for months grew stronger. They weren't random sounds, she realized. They were words in a language that somehow felt familiar. "Katie, be careful," Pete warned, but she was already reaching out to touch the crystal surface. The moment her fingers made contact, The world exploded with light and sound. Katie felt herself falling, not down but sideways through space and time. Images flashed through her mind, scenes of alien worlds and creatures she had never seen before. She saw great winged beings soaring through star-filled skies. They were beautiful and terrible, with scales that shimmered like metal and eyes like burning suns. These creatures weren't destroying worlds but protecting them, fighting against dark forces that wanted to enslave or destroy younger races. The visions showed her a war that lasted millions of years. The winged beings, who called themselves Drakmori, battled against conquerors and tyrants across the galaxy. But the war cost them everything. One by one they sacrificed themselves to save others, until only a few remained. Those last few Drakmori built special crystals like this one, storing their consciousness inside to wait for the right moment to return. They called themselves dragons, and they had become the legends and myths of countless worlds. "Who are you?" Katie whispered to the presence she felt in the crystal. "I am Paraxis," came the answer in her mind, spoken in a voice like distant thunder. "I am the last guardian of this sector, keeper of the flame that burns against darkness. I have waited eons for one worthy to carry on our mission. I'm just a human girl. I can't even walk. You are more than you know, young one. Your species has something the Drakmori lost long ago. You feel emotion not as weakness but as strength. You love fiercely and hate injustice with pure fire. This makes you perfect for what must be done." Katie felt Paraxis trying to merge with her mind, but something went wrong. Pain shot through her damaged spine as alien thoughts crashed against human consciousness. The crystal fragments in her back began to glow and burn. "The joining is difficult," Paraxis said, his mental voice strained. "Your injuries interfere with the process. But perhaps this is better. Instead of replacing you, I will become part of you. We will be something new." The merging felt like being struck by lightning over and over. Katie screamed as dragon memories flooded her human mind. She saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of stars, the courage of heroes and the cruelty of tyrants across millions of years. But slowly, the chaos began to make sense. Paraxis's ancient wisdom combined with Katie's human emotions and experiences. She was still herself, but now she was also something more. When the light faded, Katie found herself still in the wheelchair, but everything had changed. She could see in perfect darkness now. Her hearing picked up sounds from miles away. Most importantly, she could feel her legs again, sensation returning through pathways that bypassed her damaged spine entirely. "Katie!" Pete rushed to her side. "Are you okay? You were glowing like a star." She stood up from the wheelchair, her legs shaky but working. The crystal shards in her back no longer caused pain. Instead, they felt warm and alive, connected to something vast and powerful. "I'm fine, Pete. Better than fine." She looked at the great crystal, which now pulsed gently like a sleeping heart. "We need to get back to the others. Everything is about to change." As they made their way back through the tunnels, Katie felt new strength flowing through her body. She also felt something else, the burning desire for justice that had driven the Drakmori for millions of years, now combined with her very human love for her family and friends. The Zephyrians had taken everything from her, but they had no idea what they had awakened in the depths of New Terra. Dragons were returning to the galaxy, and they would learn to fear the name Katie Morgan. Katie woke up screaming. Her body burned like fire, and strange dreams of flying through star systems faded from her mind. Her mother, Lisa, rushed to her bedside in the cave where they all slept. "Another nightmare?" Lisa asked, checking Katie's temperature. For the past week, Katie had been having fever dreams and talking in her sleep using words no one understood. "Not nightmares," Katie whispered. "Memories. Paraxis's memories." Pete Collins looked up from his work on a broken radio. He had been trying to contact other human colonies for months without success. "You've been saying that name a lot lately." "Who is Paraxis?" Katie sat up slowly. Her body felt different every day since touching the crystal. Sometimes her skin felt too tight, like something was trying to push out from inside. Her eyes had changed color from green to gold, and scales appeared on her arms at random times. "He's a dragon," she said simply. "He's been sleeping in that crystal for millions of years, waiting for someone to wake him up." Lisa felt Katie's forehead with worry. "Honey, you hit your head pretty hard when that crystal exploded with light. Maybe you should rest more." But Katie stood up and walked across the cave without help. A month ago, she couldn't feel her legs at all. Now she moved with fluid grace that surprised even herself. "I'm not crazy, Mom. Watch this." She held out her hand and concentrated. Slowly, her fingers changed, growing longer and developing sharp claws. Scales spread up her arm like living armor. Her eyes began to glow in the dim cave light. Pete dropped his radio parts. Lisa took a step backward, her face pale with shock. "How is this possible?" Lisa breathed. "The Drakmori were shapeshifters," Katie explained, her voice carrying strange harmonics that made the cave walls vibrate. "They could take any form they needed. Paraxis is teaching me to do the same, but my human body makes it complicated." As if to prove her point, pain shot through Katie's spine. She doubled over as her partial transformation reversed itself violently. When she straightened up, she was fully human again, but exhaustion showed on her face. "The merging isn't complete," she gasped. "Sometimes we work together perfectly. Other times we fight each other for control, but it's getting stronger every day." Through their mental link, Paraxis spoke to her alone. "You must be careful, young one. Your emotions are powerful but chaotic. When you feel strong anger or fear, my instincts take over. I have fought wars for eons. My first response to threat is always destruction." Katie nodded, though the others couldn't hear Pyraxis. She was learning to separate his ancient warrior instincts from her own thoughts, but it wasn't easy. Yesterday, she had nearly breathed fire when Pete accidentally startled her while she was sleeping. "We need to tell the others," Lisa said, still staring at her daughter in amazement. "If you have these abilities, maybe you can help us fight back." Katie shook her head. "Not yet. I can barely control what's happening to me. And there's something else you need to know." She told them about the visions Paraxis had shared with her. The Drakmori had hidden consciousness crystals on hundreds of worlds, waiting for the right time to return. Most would never be found, but some would bond with worthy beings who could carry on the dragon legacy. "So there might be others like you?" Pete asked. "Maybe, but the bonding process is dangerous. Paraxis says most attempts fail. The host either dies or goes insane." Katie touched the crystal shard still embedded in her back. "I only survived because my injuries changed how the process worked." Their conversation was interrupted by shouts from the cave entrance. Katie's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of aircraft approaching fast. She ran to look outside and saw Zephyrian patrol ships heading straight for their hiding place. "They found us," she said grimly. "Everyone needs to evacuate now." Chaos erupted in the cave as 200 colonists grabbed emergency packs and rushed toward the back exits. But the Zephyrian ships were too fast. Soldiers rappelled down from hovering aircraft, blocking the escape routes with energy weapons. Katie watched in horror as Zephyrian troops forced the colonists to their knees. The alien soldiers were 8 feet tall with thick green scales and cold yellow eyes. Their weapons could stun or kill with equal ease. Commander Vextar himself stepped out of the lead ship. Katie had seen him in Paraxis's memories, a brutal warrior who enjoyed crushing weaker species. His scales were darker than his soldiers, marked with ritual scars that showed his rank. "Humans of New Terra," Vextar announced in his harsh voice, "you have violated the terms of occupation by hiding from Zephyrian authority. As punishment, half of you will be executed as examples to the others." Katie felt rage building inside her, but this time it wasn't just her own anger. Paraxis's fury mixed with hers, creating something far more dangerous. Her body began to change without her conscious control. "Katie, no!" Lisa called out, but it was too late. Katie's transformation this time was different from the small changes she had shown her family. Her bones extended and her muscles grew. Scales erupted across her entire body like living armor. Her face stretched into a reptilian muzzle filled with sharp teeth. Wings burst from her back and her size doubled, then tripled. In seconds, Katie had become something from Zephyrian nightmares, a full dragon, 20 feet long with eyes like burning stars. The Drakmori form was beautiful and terrible, covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. The Zephyrian soldiers froze in terror. In their ancestral memories, dragons meant death for those who oppressed the weak. Commander Vextar himself took a step backward, his weapon shaking in his clawed hands. Katie tried to speak, to demand they release the colonists, but what came out was a roar that shook the mountains. The sound was so loud that several Zephyrian soldiers dropped their weapons to cover their ears. "Impossible," Vextar whispered. "The dragons are extinct. We destroyed them all." Katie felt Paraxis taking control of their shared body. Ancient battle reflexes kicked in. and she breathed a stream of superheated plasma that melted the barrel of Vextar's weapon. The commander dropped the ruined gun and ran for his ship, but Katie's transformation was unstable. The dragon form was too much for her human mind to handle. She began attacking everything around her, unable to tell friend from enemy. Her claws gouged deep trenches in the rock, and her plasma breath set fire to the surrounding forest. "Katie, stop," Pete shouted. "You're going to hurt innocent people." His voice somehow reached through the chaos in her mind. Katie fought to regain control, to separate her human consciousness from Pyraxis's warrior instincts. Slowly, painfully, she forced herself back into human form. When the transformation ended, she collapsed to her knees, completely exhausted. The Zephyrian soldiers were gone, fled in terror to their ships, but the damage was done. Half the mountainside was on fire, and several colonists were injured from falling rocks. "I'm sorry," Katie whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I couldn't control it." Lisa knelt beside her daughter, ignoring the lingering heat from Katie's scales. "It's okay. You saved us," but Katie knew it wasn't okay. The dragon power was growing stronger every day, and she was losing the ability to control it. Worse, the Zephyrians now knew that dragons had returned to the galaxy. They would be back with stronger weapons and more soldiers. Pyraxis spoke gently in her mind. "Control will come with practice, young one. But first we must complete your training. There are things you need to learn before you face Vextar again." Katie nodded, wiping away her tears. The Zephyrians had made one mistake. They had let her live long enough to become dangerous. Now she had to learn to be a dragon without losing her humanity. The real war was just beginning. Katie stood at the edge of a cliff, wind whipping through her hair as she looked down at the Zephyrian mining operation below. 2 months had passed since her first transformation, and she had learned much about being a dragon. But the lessons had been painful and dangerous. "Focus on your breathing," Pyraxis instructed through their mental link. "Dragon fire comes from within, not from anger. Channel your power with purpose, not rage." Katie nodded and took a deep breath. Her body began to change, but this time the transformation was controlled. Her arms extended into wings. Her spine stretched longer, and scales covered her skin like flexible armor. But she kept her human face and mind clear, staying in partial dragon form. She launched herself from the cliff, wings catching the air currents with natural grace. Flying felt as normal as walking now. Below her, Zephyrian mining machines stripped away huge sections of the planet's surface, hunting for the precious crystals that powered their empire. Katie had been striking at their operations for weeks. Not random attacks driven by anger, but carefully planned raids that hurt the enemy without killing innocent human prisoners.
She had become known among the Zephyrians as the
Dragon of New Terra, a ghost that appeared from nowhere to destroy their equipment and vanish. Again, tonight's target was a supply convoy, carrying refined crystals to the orbital ships. Katie dove toward the convoy vehicles, her enhanced vision picking out details in perfect darkness. The trucks were heavily guarded by Zephyrian soldiers, but they weren't expecting an attack from above. Katie landed silently on the lead truck's roof. Her claws, sharp enough to cut through steel, sliced through the vehicle's armor plating. Inside, she found cases of processed crystals worth millions of credits. But instead of stealing them, she did something the Zephyrians never expected. She sent a telepathic message to every human prisoner in the mining camps. "When you see the blue fire, run north to the old water plant. Freedom waits there." Then Katie breathed a controlled stream of plasma, not the wild, destructive fire from her first transformation, but precise heat that melted the convoy's engines without harming the drivers. The Zephyrian soldiers scrambled out of their disabled vehicles, looking around in panic for an enemy they couldn't see. Katie was already gone, flying toward her next target. She had learned that Drakmori could become partially invisible, bending light around themselves like heat shimmer. The ability required concentration, but it made her nearly impossible to track. Her second target was the mining camp's main communication array. If she could destroy it, the Zephyrians couldn't call for reinforcements when the prisoners escaped. Katie landed on the tower's peak and extended her claws. "Stop right there, dragon." Katie spun around to find Commander Vextar waiting for her, along with a squad of elite soldiers. Their weapons were different from the standard energy rifles, crackling with strange power that made her scales tingle with warning. "These are dragon killers," Vextar said with a cruel smile. Weapons my ancestors used to hunt your kind millions of years ago. We kept them as trophies, never thinking we'd need them again. The soldiers opened fire. The energy beams hit Katie like physical blows, disrupting her ability to maintain dragon form. She stumbled and nearly fell from the tower as her transformation flickered in and out of control. Paraxis, what's happening? She asked frantically. Quantum disruptors, the ancient dragon replied grimly. They interfere with our shape-shifting abilities. Your people were not the first to learn how to fight us. Katie leaped from the tower as more shots rang out. Her wings barely supported her as the disruptor effects made her body unstable. She crash-landed in the forest beyond the mining camp, pain shooting through her partially transformed limbs. Vextar and his soldiers pursued her on foot, their night vision equipment tracking her heat signature through the trees. Katie tried to take full dragon form, but the disruptor effects made it impossible. She was trapped between human and dragon, unable to access her full power. You cannot hide from us, little dragon. Vextar called out. We will capture you and dissect you to learn your secrets. Then we will hunt down every other dragon in the galaxy and finish what our ancestors started. Katie's fear and anger began to overwhelm her control, but instead of transforming, something else happened. Through the telepathic links Paraxis had taught her to create, she felt other minds touching hers. On distant worlds, other humans were undergoing the same bonding process she had experienced. A ship mechanic named Carl on the mining world of Kepler-7 had found a dragon crystal in a crashed asteroid. A farmer's daughter called Amy on New Dakota had discovered one while digging a well. Across human space, the dragon awakening was spreading. We hear you, Katie, came Carl's voice in her mind. We're coming. Hold on, added Amy. The dragons are waking up everywhere. Katie felt strength flowing through the telepathic network. She wasn't alone anymore. The power of multiple dragon-human bonds began to stabilize her own transformation. Her body solidified into full dragon form, stronger and more controlled than ever before. She rose from the forest like a living flame, her scales reflecting starlight as her wings spread wide. The quantum disruptors still affected her, but with the support of the growing dragon network, she could fight through the interference. Vextar's soldiers opened fire again, but Katie was ready this time. Instead of trying to dodge, she created a shield of superheated air that vaporized their energy beams before they could reach her. This was a Drakmori technique that Paraxis had never been able to teach her before, one that required multiple dragon minds working together. Impossible, Vextar snarled. You're just one dragon. We destroyed thousands of your kind in the ancient wars. Katie landed in front of him, her dragon form towering over the Zephyrian commander. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the ground vibrate. I'm not just one dragon anymore. We are Legion, and we remember everything you did to our people. But instead of killing Vexitar, Katie did something that shocked him completely. She reached out with one clawed hand and gently touched his forehead. Through that contact, she shared a vision with him. She showed him Paraxis's memories of the ancient war. She let him see how the Drakmori had protected younger races, including the early ancestors of many species now part of the Zephyrian Empire. She showed him the courage of humans who had bonded with dragon spirits, not for power, but to protect others. Most importantly, she showed him her own memories, the pain of losing her father, the love she felt for her family, the determination to protect innocent people from tyranny. Vextar staggered backward, his yellow eyes wide with confusion, and something that might have been shame. No, he whispered. We were told you were monsters, destroyers of worlds. We are what we choose to be, Katie said, her voice gentler now. Just as you can choose what you become. She launched herself into the air, leaving the stunned commander alone with his thoughts. Her mission tonight hadn't been to destroy the mining operation or kill enemy soldiers. It had been to plant seeds of doubt in Zephyrian minds, to make them question the lies their empire was built on. As she flew back toward the hidden colony in the mountains, Katie felt the dragon network growing stronger. More humans were bonding with crystal dragons every day. Soon they would have enough power to challenge the Zephyrian Empire directly. But first, they needed to save the prisoners in the mining camps. Katie smiled as she saw groups of humans moving through the darkness below, following her telepathic directions toward the old water treatment plant, where Pete Collins and other colonists waited with supplies and transportation. The dragons were returning to the galaxy, but this time they weren't alone. They had human hearts to guide them, and human love to keep them from becoming the very monsters they fought against. The real war was just beginning, and Katie knew they would win. Not through superior firepower or ancient magic, but through something the Zephyrians had never learned to value: the courage to protect others, even at the cost of their own lives. Katie floated in space above New Terra, her dragon form glowing with inner fire as she looked up at the massive Zephyrian war fleet. 50 battleships hung in orbit like metal vultures, their weapons charged and ready to burn the entire planet to ash. Admiral Kregstar, Commander Vextar Superior, had arrived with orders to end the dragon problem once and for all. Through her telepathic network, Katie could feel dozens of other dragon-bonded humans across the galaxy. Carl from Kepler-7, Amy from New Dakota, and many others whose names she had learned over the past month. They were all in hiding, waiting for her signal to strike at Zephyrian forces on their own worlds. "This is it," Katie whispered to Paraxis. "If we fail here, the dragons really will be extinct forever." "We will not fail," the ancient consciousness replied with calm certainty. "You have given us something we lost long ago, young one. Hope tempered with wisdom, power guided by love. Today we fight not as destroyers, but as protectors." Katie's mother, Lisa, was safe in the underground bunkers with the other colonists. Pete Collins had volunteered to coordinate the technical aspects of their plan from the old mining control center. But Katie would face the fleet alone, at least at first. Admiral Kregstar's voice boomed across all communication channels. "Dragon of New Terra, you have 1 minute to surrender yourself for execution. If you refuse, this planet will be sterilized. Every human life will be forfeit because of your defiance." Katie transformed to her human appearance and activated an open transmission to the fleet. She wanted them to see her face when she spoke. "Admiral Kregstar," she said calmly, "my name is Katie Morgan. I'm 17 years old and I've never hurt an innocent person in my life. But you murdered my father and tried to enslave my people. Today that ends." Kregstar's reply crackled with static. "You are one dragon against 50 warships, child. Your species chose extinction when they opposed the Zephyrian Empire." Katie smiled sadly. "You still don't understand, do you? We're not the same dragons you fought millions of years ago. We've learned something your people never did. And what is that? How to forgive." Before Krexitar could respond, Katie sent a telepathic pulse across the galaxy. It was the signal the other dragon-bonded humans had been waiting for. On dozens of worlds, her friends began their coordinated attacks on Zephyrian occupation forces. But these weren't the destructive rampages the Admiral expected. Carl disabled the orbital defense platforms around Kepler-7 without harming a single Zephyrian soldier. Amy freed the human prisoners on New Dakota, while leaving the alien guards unconscious but alive. Across human space, the dragons struck with surgical precision, destroying military assets while sparing lives whenever possible. Kregstar watched his screens in growing confusion as reports flooded in from across the Empire. "Impossible," he snarled. "Where did so many dragons come from?" "From human hearts," Katie replied. "Every time your people committed an act of cruelty, you created the potential for another dragon to awaken. We don't conquer worlds, Admiral. We protect them." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire on Katie with concentrated plasma cannons. She absorbed the energy blast into her scales, using Drakmori techniques that transformed destructive power into healing light. The attacks that should have vaporized her instead made her glow brighter. Katie began to change, but not into the full dragon form she had used in previous battles. This time she became something new. Part human, part dragon, but entirely herself. She kept her human face and voice while gaining dragon wings, scales that shimmered with rainbow colors, and eyes that burned with inner starfire. "This is who I choose to be," she announced. "Not human or dragon, but both. Strong enough to protect others, but wise enough to know when mercy is more powerful than destruction." She flew toward the flagship, weaving between plasma bolts with impossible grace. The Zephyrian gunners couldn't track her movements as she danced through their crossfire like a living comet. When she reached the command ship, she didn't tear through its hull or breathe fire at its weapon systems. Instead, she placed her hands on the ship's armor and sent her consciousness into its computer networks. This was another ability that came from combining human intuition with dragon telepathy. She could interface directly with electronic systems, turning enemy technology against itself. The flagship's weapons shut down. Then its shields failed. One by one, Every system went offline as Katie's consciousness flowed through the ship like digital lightning. But she didn't damage life support or hurt the crew. She simply made their ship helpless. "What are you doing to us?" Krextar demanded over the communication link. "I'm giving you a choice," Katie replied, her voice now coming from the ship's own speakers. "You can order your fleet to withdraw from human space, or I can disable every ship here the same way I disabled yours. Your soldiers won't be harmed, but you'll be stranded in orbit around a world you can no longer threaten." Through the flagship's internal cameras, Katie watched the bridge crew's reactions. Fear dominated their expressions, but she also saw something else: doubt. Her mercy toward their admiral was confusing them, challenging everything they had been taught about dragons and humans. Commander Vextar, who had been silent since his encounter with Katie in the forest, finally spoke up. "Admiral, perhaps we should consider her offer." "Never," Krextar roared. "The Empire does not negotiate with lesser species." But Vextar stepped forward, his scarred face troubled. "She showed me memories, Admiral. The dragons we were taught to hate, they were never our enemies. They died protecting worlds like ours from real monsters. And this girl, she could have killed me twice, but she chose mercy instead." Katie felt a spark of hope. If she could convince one Zephyrian commander to question the Empire's lies, others might follow. Through the ship's communication system, she broadcast a message to the entire fleet. "Soldiers of the Zephyrian Empire, I know you believe you're fighting monsters, but look at your screens. Watch the reports from other worlds. When have you ever seen dragons spare the lives of their enemies? When have you ever seen conquerors show mercy to those who would destroy them?" She shared her memories with the entire fleet, the same vision she had shown Vexitar. Thousands of Zephyrian soldiers experienced Katie's life through her own eyes. They felt her grief when her father died, her determination to protect her family, her struggle to control dangerous powers she never asked for. Most importantly, they felt her love for all living beings, even for the enemies who had hurt her. Ship by ship, the Zephyrian fleet began to stand down. Weapons powered down and shields deactivated as doubt spread through the ranks. These were soldiers, not fanatics. When shown the truth, many chose to follow their consciences rather than their orders. Admiral Krextar watched his command crumble around him. "This is not over, Dragon," he snarled. "The Empire will send more fleets, more weapons. We will never stop hunting you." Katie's hybrid form materialized on the bridge beside him, her appearance both beautiful and terrible. "Then you'll never stop losing," she said gently. "Because we're not going to fight your empire the way you expect. We're going to change it one heart at a time." She placed her hand on Krextar's forehead before he could resist, but instead of forcing visions on him, she simply offered to share her memories if he chose to see them. After a moment's hesitation, the Admiral accepted. What he saw broke something rigid inside him. Katie didn't show him dragon power or human defiance. She showed him her father's love, her mother's courage, Pete's kindness, and the determination of ordinary people to protect each other against impossible odds. When the vision ended, Krextar was weeping. "What have we done?" he whispered. "What have we become?" 6 months later, Katie stood in the rebuilt town square of New Terra. The Zephyrian occupation was over, ended not by military defeat, but by soldiers who refused to fight an enemy that wouldn't hate them back. Many of the former occupiers had stayed to help rebuild what they had destroyed. Commander Vextar now worked alongside Pete Collins, using Zephyrian technology to repair the damaged crystal mines. Admiral Krextar had returned to the Empire's capital to speak truth to power, carrying Katie's message of forgiveness to the highest levels of government. The Dragon Network continued to grow. New Guardians bonded with crystal dragons every week, but they learned Katie's lessons. Power without wisdom was destruction. Strength without mercy was tyranny. They became protectors, not conquerors. Katie's mother Lisa ran the colony's new hospital, treating both human and Zephyrian patients with equal care. The crystal shards were finally removed from Katie's spine, but by then she no longer needed them. The bond with Pyraxis had become complete, making her something entirely new. She was still human enough to laugh with her friends and cry when she was sad. But she was also dragon enough to fly between the stars and guard entire solar systems from harm. Most importantly, she had learned that the greatest power wasn't the ability to destroy enemies, but the wisdom to turn them into friends. As the sun set over New Terra, Katie took her hybrid form and soared into the evening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new worlds to protect, new hearts to change. The galaxy was vast and full of conflicts, but for the first time in millions of years it also had guardians who remembered that love was stronger than fear.